Game 6, Boston versus St. Louis. The Bruins win this one 5-1. It's going back to Boston for Game 7. This is, I think a lot of people call this, including myself, this is going to go like 7 games. The way these two teams play, the way they're built. In any case, before we jump into the first period and the scorning, lots of scorning is going to happen. Let's talk about just some intro stats and some side notes. Now, for St. Louis, Robert Thomas is in on this game, and for Boston, Carlson Kuhlman is in. Say that 3 times fast. Goaltenders, Binnington, in Game 6 and 7 during the playoffs, he's now 4-0 with a 1.13 goals against and a .949 save percentage. Rask has saved 117 of 120 shots in elimination games in these playoffs. He also has a career record of 5-on-5 facing elimination with a 2.64 goals against. Boston, interesting stat, is now 0-5 in the last 2 games, meaning Game 4 and 5, on the power play. St. Louis has finally figured this out. And if I'm a team with a lot of money like the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm throwing money at their assistant penalty kill coach, their assistant coach, to bring him back there, because someone has seemed to have figured this out. Now, also, Boston it's their first elimination in these playoffs since, ironically, the Toronto Maple Leafs series. And 4 of the 5 of these games so far, up until this one, have been decided by 1 goal. Okay, let's get into the first period here. At 17-18, not even 3 minutes in, St. Louis gets a power play. They just come right at the Bruins, as they do for most of these games. And this one's for delay of game. Puck goes over the glass in the defensive zone. This is Curley who takes the penalty. Now, going into this penalty, Boston has killed 24 of their last 25. The PK people seem to overlook that as well. And the Bruins kill this one, and they make it 25 for the last 26. But St. Louis still really comes close on this. They have some prime opportunities. And the first 7 minutes is almost all St. Louis, really. And the other interesting thing about it was Boston, up until that point, Boston hadn't even won a face-off, like 7 minutes into the game. Very strange. Then Boston gets a power play. Here it is. Can they change things? At around 12:43, Shen gets an interference. No, he gets as a roughing penalty for hitting Nordstrom in the numbers, right in the back. He sits in the box, but what could be the turning point of the game is not this penalty, but the next one that they take shortly thereafter with 58 seconds left in the first. This is O'Reilly for a delay of game, and the puck goes over the glass in the D zone. Boston now has a 5-on-3. Now, they've done a great job of killing off Boston power plays in the past couple of games, and even in this game so far but I mean, you can't give the Bruins a 5-on-3. It's not happening. Boston scores, of course. It's 1-0. That's a goal by Marchand, his 9th of the playoffs, and I think the Bruins have a ridiculous record, like 12-1 or something when Marchand scores, and that's assisted by Pasternak and Krug. Binnington, no chance. It's a one-timer from east to west, and it's in past to Marchand. And after that, there's still about a $1.20 of power play time left for the Bruins at 5-on-4. St. Louis kills that really well. So yeah, there you have it. Now, Boston is 12-3 when scoring first in the playoffs. St. Louis is 12-4. And now, right after this goal, Boston continues to press for a few minutes after this power play. But with about 7 minutes or so left in the period, St. Louis really wakes up. Then they draw a penalty. Around 1:38 left in the game, less than 2 minutes. It's Chara for interference on Perron. They're just a bunch of shoving back and forth, and 3 or 4 shots later, Chara finally puts Perron on his butt, and they send him to the box. So he looks engaged. He looks a lot overall, he looked a lot better in this game than he did the last. His timing was back and everything, and the jaw, it didn't seem to bother him much. Now, as the period ends, of course, the penalty is going to draw into the next period as well. And an interesting thing, but Rask, when the horn goes, Rask, because Perron's not too far from him, he goes and he headbutts him. No penalties called, nothing comes of it, but he headbutts him on the way out. Those two have history if you've been watching these videos and or the games. Now the shots in that first period were, I gotta flip my screen here a bit, were 12-9 for Boston. Now we get into the first intermission. I'm watching Sportsnet. Don Cherry comes on. He talks about, how great the power play was. I'm sitting here, but it was a 5-on-3. I know Boston's got a killer power play, but stating what I just did about the past two games, St. Louis looked like they had it covered up until they took that second one. What are you going to do? I mean, against that. He also mentioned how the first line was really started to get going, which is true. They looked like they were dangerous at times out there. He talked about how the St. Louis D were really pinching a lot to keep the puck in and were really making it hard on Boston to exit their own zone. St. Louis defenseman Pietrangelo played 10-21 in the first period. So he's on pace for 31 minutes for the whole game, over half the game. Unbelievable. Cherry and Ron McLean also briefly mentioned that the Charlotte Checkers beat the Chicago Wolves to win the AHL Calder Cup, Stanley Cup of the American Hockey League. Moving on to the second. Boston kills the rest of the penalty left on that Chara roughing call, but St. Louis comes really, really close. There's only like 23 seconds left in it, but again, St. Louis looked dangerous. They looked like they're starting to figure it out. Now, in the first 8 to 9 minutes, both teams, seem to have got some chances. St. Louis gets another power play at 10:49. Marchand for tripping on Pietrangelo. Now he just hits him almost at full speed from behind, leg on leg, in the back of Pietrangelo's leg, and he falls like a sack of potatoes. And it looked like it really hurt. Almost similar to somewhat similar to the Bozak penalty that was never called. Now, on the St. Louis power play, the puck looks like, I thought the puck went in. I was like, oh my God, St. Louis just scored. And the play kept going. And I was like, what? They got to put a replay on that, right? So they look at it later, and the puck at this point is behind Rask. Not past the line yet, but in the air. McAvoy finds it, bats it onto Rask's back with his stick, taps it onto his back, and as he does that, Rask is like, where's the puck? And he moves, he turns, and the puck... Excuse me, did I just burp on camera? The duck, it's just water and watermelon. I had a lot of watermelon. The puck, anyways, leaves the slot, leaves the blue paint, and what seems to be a definite goal is not one. Boston kills that one as well. St. Louis just had a lot of good looks there. Now, the Blues, at this point, I feel like they're getting close. So you feel like they're going to score any minute, and then they draw another penalty. At around 6:15, McAvoy goes off for tripping. Of course, the Blues are 0 for 2. This is their third power play of the game. Bruins kill this one as well. This power play for St. Louis doesn't look quite as effective, but they do get a couple of chances. And for the remainder of this period, it's just a track meet between the two teams. They're just both of them are just throwing everything they can on the goalie with hopes of a lucky bounce, because both goaltenders are playing really well. Towards the end of this period, just like Rask and Perron, Binnington bumps into Krug, or is it Krug bumps into Binnington? However you want to look at it, there's a little exchange there. Binnington seems to do that a lot too. Especially if his team is down. I've never seen a goalie, trying to think, last time a goalie did stuff like that. Maybe Hextall, Belfour? I don't know, if you happen to remember one, let me know in the comments section. Also, a little note, Pietrangelo and Peryanko, these two St. Louis D, have now played over 18 minutes by the end of the second. We go into the second intermission with a Sportsnet panel, and they talk about how St. Louis is now 0 for 4 in the power play. because Rask has been brilliant. He's kept Bruins in it. He's composed. How St. Louis definitely needs to do more of the same because they're really cycling the puck well in the Bruins zone, keeping them pinned in. Because it really feels like they're the better team almost to this point. Then Nick Kypreos mentions how great the refs are doing and how all the calls have been good and there haven't been any crazy non-calls. And yeah, you could say that for the most of the rest of the game, really. Elliot Friedman brings up how Binnington is staying engaged, getting in Bruins' faces, like I just mentioned as well. Kypreos also brings up an important point about how St. Louis is really plugging up the defensive zone 5-on-5, and he shows a lot of replay of it, and they just don't give the Bruins any room to move around, to pass the puck. Nothing. We go into the third. Now, a little stat here. Boston is now 12-0 when going into the third period, and bam. 17-29 in. Boston goes up 2-0. This is a goal by Brandon Carlo, his second of the playoffs, assisted by Jake DeBrusk. A Blues player tries to clear this, and the ref kind of accidentally gets in the way. And as soon as that happens, I'm like, oh boy. I instantly get this gut feeling something bad is going to happen for St. Louis. The puck stays in. It just gets thrown on net. It takes a bounce off the ice, and it's just a knuckleball. At this point, Binnington, he kind of has to guess if it's going to go left or right. He guesses wrong. He clips him. He gets some of it, but it still goes in. You can't blame it on the guy. And yeah, it's a 2-0 game. At this point, the faceoffs have just been dominated by St. Louis. We're about 11-19 into the second now, and it's like, with about 58 win percentage. Excuse me. Then at 9:45, Boston makes it 3-0. They're just peeling away here. This was a goal by Carlson Kuhlman, who's playing his first game of the series and maybe even the playoffs. That was assisted by Krejci. This is his first of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this one, again, it's hard to blame Binnington on this one because it's an absolute perfect shot. It barely sails over Binnington's shoulder, hits both the crossbar and the post, almost dead in the corner, and goes in. It's just one of those, like, what just happened? I don't know. What? It was one of those goals. Now, St. Louis has been pressing hard, like, this whole third period, but you could really tell after that third one, they're a bit deflated. Their intensity isn't the same. And at this point, I'm thinking they just got to get one. They're down 3-0. They got to just get one goal, beat Rask at least once. So you go into the next one, feeling a little bit of confidence in yourself. And literally 3 seconds after that popped in my head, and I was writing that down. St. Louis makes it a 3-1 game. This is a goal by Ryan O'Reilly, his seventh of the playoffs, assisted by Pietrangelo and Perron. Now, they didn't call us a goal right off the bat. The play kept on going until there was a whistle. They go over the review. The goal went in around 12:01 of the third period. This was sort of a one-timing snapshot from O'Reilly. Rask's pad goes in past the goalie line to stop this, and the puck goes just barely in, just like about that much, like an inch, just over an inch in and out really fast. That's why I didn't even realize it was a goal. Then, with 5:54 left, Boston goes up 4-1. Now, this is a goal by David Pastrnak, his ninth of the playoffs. They also mentioned this, the panel, during the second intermission, how he was getting some opportunities and it looked like something was going to happen for him, and it did. That goal was assisted by Marchand and Curley. Again, this wasn't Binnington's fault. There was like 2-3 turnovers by St. Louis in their own zone. Very unlike them, because they start to pinch a little bit more because they're down by a couple of goals, and it goes from Marchand to Pastrnak, who's all alone on the side of the net, and it's in before Binnington can get over there. And soon after that, St. Louis pulls the goalie with about 4 minutes left in their game. And then somebody throws a beer on the ice. A tall can of Budweiser on the ice. I didn't actually see it, but I heard the commentators mention it, and then they cut away to it later, sitting in the corner and just splurting all over it. Just don't do that, man. Whoever that was in the crowd, I don't care how drunk you are. I don't care how much you paid for that ticket, albeit, That's a sad thing for the money St. Louis fans paid and then have the game and have them lose that game. But there's no call for that whatsoever, ever. Especially while they're in play, because you could hit a player, et cetera, et cetera. Just a really awful move. In any case, with about 2:19 left, Boston scores an empty netter. It's Chara. It's 5-1 now, Boston. That's his second of the playoffs. It goes unassisted. Basically, he whips it in from the defensive zone. It's a bit of a lucky shot. He just tries to put it clear of the puck, really, and that's about it. And yeah, the commentators, the play-by-play guys mention, will St. Louis kind of start to feel like Toronto when they missed a chance to put the Bruins away in Game 6? The shots in the third, by the way, were 12-9 for the Bruins, and there was a bunch of penalties right towards the end there, mostly from St. Louis. Connor Clifton from the Bruins, Sammy Blais, Zach Sanford, and Bortuzzo got 2. One for misconduct. For roughing, slashing, all that kind of thing in the last, 20 or so seconds of the game. The fans, with about a minute left, started chanting, "Let's go Blues," which was, kind of nice. And then with seconds left, they were chanting, we want the cup. And yeah, and that was it. Let's just briefly go over the stats here. The shots overall were 32-28 for the Bruins. St. Louis has got to put a lot more shots on Rask if they want to win that game 7. At least 10 or more. Hits in this one were 29-27 for the Blues. The face-offs were 37-26 for St. Louis. The penalties were 20-10 for the Blues. Of course, as I mentioned, most of those came in the dying seconds of the game. The giveaways were 10-4 for St. Louis, and it was mostly in that third period when they were down 3-1. There was 3 just in one play, really, that led to that Pasternak goal. The takeaways were 11-10 for St. Louis. The block shots were 16-9 for the Bruins. The Bruins seem to always win that category, and I don't know. We would think it might be the other way around because of the stifling way the Blues play defense. But the power play, the Blues go 0 for 4. They came close on 3 of those. I want to say the Bruins go 1 for 2. Of course, they score on that 5-on-3. And there you have it. Yeah, the stars of the game. The third star was David Krejci, who had 1 assist, was a +2 with 15:06 of ice time. Jake DeBrusk with 1 assist, +2, 13:14 of ice time. And Tuukka Rask with a .966 save percentage. He saved 27-28 with a .964. Why are those different from Sportsnet to the score? Anyways, Jordan Binnington, of course, takes the loss, saves 27-31 with .871 percentage. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinion. Who do you think has the edge going into the last game, really? It could go either way. The way both teams really bounce back. Binnington doesn't look like a rookie goaltender at all, so I wouldn't put it past the Blues not winning this one in Boston. They are a good road team. Boston's still the veterans. All the savvy. It's going to be interesting. Hit like if you like this video. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. And hey, if you happen to have any Hockey Geek friends, please don't feel shy about sharing. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.